So over to Raj. Are you ready to share, please? Right,
Yeah.
Dr. Ravishwaran,
Yeah.
Consultant physician, but primarily diabesity and endocrinology. He is my good colleague and also chair of the National Diabesity Forum UK, and also runs the London Diabesity Clinic and a Simplyweight project and a service which has actually benefited thousands across the country and globally. So he is addressing some really key questions that are we really barking at the wrong tree in terms of remission of diabetes? Or can we ever, because to my mind, or what my RN research team has told me, that it's incurable. And none of the guidelines, none of the societies ever recommend that, we should aim for remission. It's never been proposed. Actually, it was only WHO 2016-17 onwards started to talk about it. And you might see, Raj, you might recall the 𝒘𝒊𝒕𝒉 survey from US, which showed that only about 1 in 500 were able to achieve remission with standard of care. So with that background, can you answer, is it ABCD or is it DBCD? Okay. I'm going to leave that for the audience and you to work out. And of course, are we barking at the wrong tree in terms of both pre-diabetes and beyond? And why are we failing on the line of diabesity, obesity, whatever you may want to label it as? And of course, then linking into that, do you think it's one disease at all? Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ashish Thakur, Professor B.V. Thakur, Hridayam Foundation, scientific partners and media partners. That's excellent talk I've heard from all the erudite speakers. Dr. 𝒂𝒊𝒏𝒈, Dr. Virmani, Dr. Vijay Vishwanath, that is fantastic. I think you have all eaten into my talk. So I'll be alluding to some of them. But my apologies, because I'm going to be very controversial. Having been in this field for nearly 30 years, I find that I am fighting a difficult battle. So I'm going to talk about my experience, but it's predominantly, as Dr. Smita Thakur was saying, the people in this country, that is in the United Kingdom, being free, the problem we face is huge. And also, as we know that diabetes, the brand is getting diluted. 15 years ago, there was only one member of my extended family who had diabetes. Now everybody has got diabetes, so they don't care. They say, oh, I've got diabetes, so what? So it's just the talk of the town. So it's getting diluted. So what should we do? So are we barking at the wrong tree? The first thing is, we talked about continuous glucose monitoring by Dr. 𝒂𝒊𝒏𝒈. That's excellent, and that's the technology we are starting to use. And then about pre-diabetes. And then Dr. Virmani was talking about holistic medicine. And he rightly pointed out that it's not a glucocentric disease. Actually, it's much more than that. What I'm going to take you forward is, we go from diabetes to pre-diabetes, and what next? As Dr. Smita Thakur was pointing out, is it HbA1c 39 or is it going to be 25, 20? Where do we stop? So is it a sugar disease? Are we banking on all about sugar? And is type 2 diabetes a single disease? And I can answer that question, it is not. I think we are ignorant, and that is why we are lumping everything. Whichever is not type 1, we lump it into type 2. And I'll explain in my subsequent slides why I think so. Is because we find so many medical conditions and we treat that and suddenly diabetes disappears. So the third thing is about remission. Dr. Vijay Vishwanath gave an excellent talk about pre-diabetes, which I agree about it. But what we find is it's a narrow window, 42 to 47. And if you know about the physiology of glycation doesn't happen exactly the same amount every day in that 120 days. The speed of glycation varies. So people's HbA1c flipped from 38 to 42 to 49 to 58. So what do? You go and check their HbA1c after 3 months, it's 40. So are they classified as non-diabetic? And the next 3 months, it's 48. So it's a narrow window to play around. And the passionate topic for me is obesity. And I'm finding that everybody is talking about eating less and exercising more. And it's not rocket science, but actually it's much more complicated than rocket science. That's what I've learned. If only everybody knows you've got to eat less and exercise more, but who does that? No one does that. And fat is no more an inert organ. We were all thinking fat is a lump of lard, and that's not the case. It's the most important endocrine organ. We have moved from pituitary to intestine, and now we are moving to fat as the most important endocrine organ. So how are we performing? I'm going to show you some data. As you can see over here, amputation rates are going up. Yes, we've got all the technology, new medications are coming up. That's fantastic. We are educating our patients. But why is amputations going up? 90% of our patients are obese. What are we doing for that? Are we doing anything for that? Or are we telling them to go and eat less and exercise more? So can you see that I'm moving away from pre-diabetes? It should be much earlier than that. And the glycemic control is not good. Dr. Sabu showed a slide where it's poor in India. Actually, it's worse in UK. The number of people with poor glycemic control is very bad. See, that's the trend for obesity in the UK. As you can see, year on year, it's increasing. But every week, there's actually a new diet. And what does it do? It makes people put on weight. Actually, no one loses weight. You lose weight for 12 weeks. That's usually the period of research study, or 6 months. And after that, they put on weight. And you know what the worst bit is? Among these obese people, there are actually more super obese people. My average BMI is 60. The biggest person in my clinic is 120 BMI. 10 years ago, I didn't expect this. And now it's getting worse. And I don't think India is far behind. So let me go on to this business about diabetes remission. I think it's a farce. This is based on ADA. They said that if you get it for 1 year, it's partial remission. Then you have 1 year without medication, it's complete remission. And then if you get it for 5 years, it's prolonged remission. You know what they did in the UK? There was this direct study where they put them on 800 calorie diet and they went into remission. And how many people went into remission? At the end of 2 years, 3 years, 30%. But again, this is not rocket science. Low carb, high protein diet was used even before discovery of insulin. So there's nothing new in this. All my patients with obesity have used low carb diet for 15 years. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in the long run. You go talk to them after 10 years, 15 years, they're all super obese. So what they did in the UK, they changed the position statement. They knew that is not going to work. So they said it practical definition of diabetes remission. And they said that remission is when you don't need therapies for 6 months or over. So from 5 years, they changed the goalpost to 6 months. So can you see how difficult it is? It's not easy. It's easy to say we'll get people under remission. But what is remission? There's no clear definition for remission. Because people don't follow books. That's the problem. They don't follow books. So most of these remission is based on weight loss interventions. And I know, having been in this weight loss industry for 15 years, diets don't work. Diets actually make people put on weight. And especially low carb diets, they're not sustainable. And putting someone on 800 calories, you can do it for 3 months, 6 months. After that, it is not sustainable. And there's always a weight rebound. As the previous speakers have spoken about, age is important. But I'm going to take you one step before that. why are they getting MAGE? And that's the key. We know that treatment to target, time in range, mean amplitude glycemic excursion, that's all good enough and it does help. But we need to find out, why are they hungry? What is making them hungry? Do you ask your patients about the different types of hunger? There are 7 different types of hunger. Do you have the time to ask them? Do you ask them if they got nocturnal hypoglycemia? Or do you ask them if they got reactive hypoglycemia? So unless you find out the type of hunger, you cannot move forward in management of diabetes. Do you find out if they got sarcopenia? We don't do that. So before going on to MAGE or treatment in range, we need to be thinking about these sort of things like hunger, lean body mass, sarcopenia. And the most important thing, as clinicians in UK, what we do is we have a reactive approach. That is, we keep calling patients back to the clinic. If their HbA1c is good, 53, 48, fantastic, you send them home. And then we throw some more medication when it starts to go up. So what we don't do is, we don't preserve beta cells. As Dr. Virmani was mentioning, the hugely important thing is the legacy effect, a metabolic memory. And that's what we need to be focusing on. Beta cell preservation rather than chasing HbA1c. So our thought process as experts in diabetes, we need to be training our patients and our colleagues to say that actually start thinking differently. You need to think outside the box. And as Dr. Virmani mentioned, we need to have specific treatment regimes. As you can see, the number of people with less than 1 year. This can't be the same treatment for someone who's got diabetes for 20 to 29 years. So treatment is going to vary. And he also mentioned about hypertension. I thought that was very interesting. He said if you treat hypertension, diabetes control improves. And that's absolutely right, because hypertension and glycemic control is a continuum. And there is a recent paper which shows that people with hypertension, and Professor B.B. Thakur was mentioning about hypertension, 10% of the patients with hypertension have got Conn's syndrome. What do we do? Do we investigate patients with hypertension? We don't. All we do is provide them antihypertensives. But if you find out the underlying cause for hypertension, out of which 10 is Conn's syndrome, and then you've got Cushing's and pheochromocytoma, you will sort out the glycemic control. And in my men patients, I ask about erectile dysfunction. So it's not to find out if they've got erectile dysfunction, but I try and find out if they got low testosterone. And when I replace testosterone, I find the glycemic control improving because they improve the lean body mass. So that's the non-glycemic interventions I do. So yes, we need to do precision medicine, but it should be very focused on their needs. And as I mentioned, we need to be asking our patients, why are they eating? And don't tell them what to do. Find out why are they doing it? What is making them do it? Why did they eat? Or why did they eat a certain type of food? Or why don't they like a certain type of food? And the last one is improving sleep hygiene. We need to spend time talking to our patients about sleep. How often do they go against the circadian rhythm? And that's very key. So Dr. Ashish Thakur asked me about, is it ABCD or DBCD? So ABCD, so obesity is not another 12-week program. Obesity is a chronic disease like diabetes. So if someone loses weight, that's good. If they put on weight, even that's good. You need to keep engaging them. So obesity is now being reclassified as adiposity-based chronic disease. So Dr. Thakur was asking, should we actually call it diabesity-based chronic disease? I do agree, because everybody will have some degree of glucose intolerance, because it's just a continuum. So we need to think about obesity as a chronic disease and start tackling obesity. So in India, what I find is, I see patients from all over the world who come to my London clinic, and what I see is they have a metabolic problem without obesity. So that means the BMI is normal. At 23, they have diabetes, glucose intolerance. So they have metabolically normal obese people. So it's a wide range of group. And so Dr. 𝒂𝒐𝒏𝒈 was talking about weight circumference. I completely agree with that. And that's how we need to be reclassifying and not just look at BMI. And if you look at the Canadian Obesity Association, they're adopting something called Edmonton Obesity Staging System. So body mass index is useless. A lot of my rugby players, football players, their body mass index is 40, but their muscle mass is huge. So it's trying to be deceptive. So I don't use BMI anymore. I use Edmonton Obesity Staging System. And that's the key. The key is to move away from BMI. Diets don't help. In fact, if you look at the actual meaning of diet, the Italian word is lifestyle. Diet is not food. Diet is lifestyle. And that's what we need to be asking our patients to do. So finally, to conclude, I focus on why my patients are doing this. Why are they not listening to me? Because they have all the knowledge. I try and help them to find out why. And so I also use AI, but the problem is AI is as good as the data you have entered. AI cannot be better than the data. So unless we improve, AI cannot be improved. So I'll stop at that, Dr. Thakur.
Thank you, Raj. That was really thought-provoking.